The United Nations Economic and Social Council held a virtual high-level segment this Friday, which focused on the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. China is experiencing the worst floods in decades, causing severe damages. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has called on all political actors in Mali to use peaceful means to resolve the conflict in the country. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. The United Nations Economic and Social Council met virtually for a high-level segment this Friday, focused on future trends and scenarios linked to the long-term impact of COVID-19. Jamaican Foreign Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith addressed the Council and called to reinforce multilateralism.
Firstly, we must not only recommit to the strengthening of multilateralism now, but we must ensure and demonstrate by our actions that our interconnectivity, dialogue, and international cooperation promote and delivers development and prosperity for our people. Unprecedented times demand a robust United Nations that can respond with pragmatism to an ever-changing world without compromising its fundamental principles and values. We need an institution that is innovative and empowered to lead the way in times of global crises. Ours must be a United Nations that demonstrates equality, inclusivity, and transparency in the creation of a transformed world for all. That is, and I quote, the future we want and the United Nations we need.
And in the framework of the UN Economic and Social Council meeting, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arias praised the role of the World Health Organization during the pandemic and stressed the idea of fair distribution of medicines to treat COVID-19 worldwide.
WHO's role in the pandemic is an example of the multilateralism that is needed. It must act and speak truthfully. It must not bend under pressures, extortions, and attacks from the powerful. It must assert its moral authority, its scientific capabilities, and cooperation based on solidarity. The multilateralism that our peoples need must put an end to conventional and economic wars through reason, international law, and much courage. The new multilateralism must point towards the fulfillment of sustainable development goals in all of our countries and distribute resources in a differentiated and equitable manner to guarantee it. The multilateralism needed by humankind and during and after pandemic must show solidarity, efficiency, audacity, creativeness, and courage. We must overcome the formalities, the speeches, the UN language. As Comandante Hugo Chavez said, we must delve into the people's catacombs, feel their needs, suffer their pain, undergo their deprivation, and build with them their own paths towards their happiness and liberation.
The Argentinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has rejected the military exercises being carried out by the United Kingdom in the Malvinas Islands. The statement stressed that the air and naval exercises are being conducted in violation of all the recommendations approved by the United Nations and the agreements of other countries with coasts in the South Atlantic. The Malvinas Islands form part of the geographical area usurped from Argentina by the United Kingdom in 1833, and the dispute over the territory continues today. Colombian Senator Iván Cepeda has called on the Attorney General's office to investigate Senator and former President Álvaro Uribe for his ties to Maria Claudia Daza, allegedly linked to the vote-buying scandal and illegal financing of President Iván Duque's electoral campaign.
There is abundant evidence of the participation of Ms. Maria Claudia Daza in the 2018 election campaign, when she was part of Senator Álvaro Uribe's legislative unit. For this reason, I have filed a disciplinary complaint today, since I consider that such participation could have been encouraged or directed by Senator Álvaro Uribe, which constitutes a very serious disciplinary offense.
Nicaraguan Army Chief General Julio Cesar Aviles has strongly rejected the smear campaign launched against the military institution. The general warned that the Nicaraguan army is being attacked and smeared in order to undermine it. Aviles stressed that soldiers, sergeants and officers fulfill their missions and tasks with all moral authority and not on the basis of their income. Finally, he called on the Nicaraguan people not to let themselves be deceived or manipulated. Cuba has not reported any critically ill COVID-19 patients for 20 consecutive days. During his daily press briefing on coronavirus figures, National Director of Epidemiology at the Ministry of Public Health, Dr. Francisco Duran, reported that one COVID-19 patient is in a serious condition and was admitted to the Luis Diaz Soto Hospital in Havana. He also stressed that no COVID-19 fatalities were reported for the 5th day in a row, with the death toll remaining at 87. The doctor again called on the population to comply with protection measures and guidelines to prevent the spread of the virus. St. Lucian Minister of Health Mary Isaac expressed gratitude to Cuban health workers for their efforts in fighting COVID-19 on behalf of her people and government. A statement on the Facebook page of the Ministry of Health and Wellness highlighted the contribution and services provided by the Cuban health personnel in St. Lucia and several other nations affected by COVID-19. 113 Cuban health workers arrived in St. Lucia on March 27th, including nurses, doctors and biomedical engineers, and were deployed across several health facilities. This Friday, 30 of these Cuban collaborators departed St. Lucia after having completed their mission. The health minister recognized the free, voluntary and humanistic support provided by the Cuban medical workers, whom she praised for providing an extremely good service. On the eve of nomination day in Trinidad and Tobago, opposition leader Kamla Pearcett-Biesesa is being accused of using racist speech after a clip was posted in which she appeared to call current Prime Minister Keith Rowley the black man on the other side. She has denied the accusations, claiming she called him the blank man.
People are concerned, and in fact the black man on the other side talked about kindergarten. What a great disservice and disrespect to the young people of this country. Says the team is a kindergarten team. Well, look, I prefer have this team of young people than the geriatrics you have. Because the same things that you have done and not done for 5 years, you have brought them all back to do nothing, blank again.
Because there are people in Wassa who are interfering with the water supply to influence the vote. And I trust that after the 11th of October, there will be no incentive for that, because we are going to beat them in the east, we're going to beat them in the west, we're going to beat them in the north, we're going to beat them in the south, we're going to beat them on the foot sole, and after that, all that kind of behavior will stop. That is what they do. They do not help the country solve any of its problems. They exploit the country's problems. As far as they're concerned, this country must fail so that they can succeed. Everybody knows that the closure of the border is what allows us in this country to remain healthy.
And we're taking a short break now, but we'll be right back, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. China is experiencing the worst floods in decades, causing severe damages. According to the Chinese authorities, devastating floods along China's Jiangxi River have caused extensive damage. The heavy rains since June have left at least 141 people dead or missing and forced nearly 15 million people to be evacuated from their homes in July alone, while causing billions of dollars in economic losses. The water levels in some provinces have hit historic highs, prompting an effort by more than 100,000 troops and other personnel to rescue residents and prevent further flooding. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying has stressed that high-ranking United States officials continue their absurd attacks on China.
Out of their own selfish political interests, these people do not hesitate to hijack domestic political opinion, China-US relations, international relations even, to the point where they have lost their minds and gone mad. Such short-sighted behavior of drinking poison to quench one's thirst is causing seriously harm to the United States itself, as well as the world. It's really absurd.
Acting U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security Chad Wolf said that the U.S., Mexico and Canada will keep their borders partially closed at least until August. The U.S. official stated that the measure responds to an agreement between the three countries with the objective of stopping the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic in the North American region. The borders of the three nations have been closed since March after an agreement to limit movement between the countries. The measure has been extended on several occasions. US top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci has stressed that something must be done to stop the spread of COVID-19 and noted the importance of global cooperation to fight the pandemic.
We have now a very large outbreak. There have been, as you probably know, close to 140,000 deaths, and we have several million infections. That's the sobering news, is that there are sections of the country, particularly a group of southern states, particularly California, Florida, Texas and Arizona, as well as others, that are seeing a resurgence where we had a baseline of about 20,000 cases a day has now gone up to 30, 40, 50, 60, and even 70 on the last count. So we've got to do something about that. That's something we need to address. If it's smoldering in another part of the world, we're vulnerable here. I mean, we saw that absolutely when it emerged in a well-defined geographic area in China, and then all of a sudden, the entire world with more than 220 countries have been involved. So that's the answer to your question. It is global by nature, so we need global organizations and global cooperation.
European Union leaders met this Friday as part of a high-stakes EU summit on virus recovery. The 27 EU leaders are facing huge challenges as the bloc is suffering the worst recession in its history, and member states continue to argue over who should pay the most to help each other to revive their battered economies. The mood was sombre as the leaders met in person for the first time in 5 months, hoping to overcome their divisions regarding a €750 billion stimulus package.
So we are at the beginning of the summit now, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If we do it right, we can overcome this crisis stronger and emerge stronger from the crisis. All the necessary pieces are on the table, and a solution is possible.
But I think we have quite a difficult negotiations also, so we will see how this will go. But I'm hopeful at this point, and I hope that we will.
I think it's extremely important that the European Union collectively gives a very strong message to its citizens that it has the wherewithal and the capacity to deal with this unprecedented crisis that has been caused by the global pandemic.
Residents of Spain's second biggest city, Barcelona, have been urged to stay home unless absolutely necessary after a surge in coronavirus cases.
The citizens of all these municipalities must stay at home and go out only if it is essential. This is our request. We depend on all of you to stop the contagion spreading everywhere, and we recommend too that you don't move to second homes during this weekend.
UK flag carrier British Airways is retiring its entire Boeing 747 jumbo jet fleet following the huge blow to international air travel caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has hit the air transport sector hard, with the latest casualty, American Airlines, which is the biggest airline in the world, set to lay off over 25,000 frontline employees. Meanwhile, United Airlines warned last week it could lay off as many as 36,000 workers. Virgin Australia has also collapsed and is being bought out by a US company. The airline has announced plans to lay off 12,000 staff. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights this Friday called on all political actors in Mali to exercise restraint and use peaceful means to resolve the conflict in the country.
The announcement by President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta that there will be investigations into the violence is welcome. It's essential that all alleged human rights violations and acts of violence committed during the demonstrations are the subject of prompt, thorough, transparent and independent investigations, and that those responsible are held to account. We call on all sides to exercise utmost restraint and use peaceful means to deal with their grievances, which have been triggered by a variety of factors, including the outcome of delayed parliamentary elections, alleged endemic corruption and weak governance, heightened insecurity and violent extremism in different parts of the country. We're also concerned that since the demonstrations on the 10th of July, there's been a proliferation of fake news and messages online inciting violence, which risk heightening tensions further.
And the leader of Mali's opposition June 5th movement, Imam Mahmoud Dicko, this Friday welcomed the mediation mission sent to the country by the Economic Community of West African States.
Anyone who comes here today to try to help us, to ensure that Mali is a peaceful country where it is good to live, I believe that these are people we must welcome with open arms. And so we really spoke as brothers and as Africans, and I hope, inshallah, that something will come out of this that will give Mali back its greatness.
Rwanda has reopened places of worship after nearly 4 months of closure, but with strict coronavirus control measures. The decision to reopen places of worship was adopted in a cabinet meeting chaired by President Paul Kagame on Wednesday, during which he stressed that the sites would only be reopened following an inspection to ensure they met all the strict restrictions. The move comes at a time when Rwanda is experiencing a spike in new COVID-19 cases, with 70% of its total confirmed cases recorded during the past month.
That means they have been found lacking on implementing set guidelines to contain the spread of the pandemic. Again, it should be noted.
Kenyan healthcare professionals are at increased risk of exposure to the novel coronavirus, as 41 workers at the country's largest maternity hospital, including 19 medical staff, tested positive for COVID-19 on Wednesday.
Our healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers, and I think 21 or 22 are support staff, ancillary staff from revenue, kitchen, CSSD and the like. And all these people are under home-based care isolation. None is under institutional isolation.
And Kenyan authorities thanked the Cuban government on Friday for sending a medical brigade to support the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
And today, 389 people have tested positive to the disease from a sample size of 3,545. That means that Kenya today has some 12,062 positive cases that we have dealt with. And we have so far tested some 233,641. From those cases, 385 are Kenyans, while 4 are foreigners.
Commercial flights between the United Arab Emirates and Iran resumed this Friday after being suspended for 5 months due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Reef Brigade, who will be arriving in the country tonight to serve and offer services for the next 6 months. And they are specialized doctors in internal medicine, oncology, cardiology, renal and pediatrics. On behalf of the government, we are thankful to the Cuban government through Ambassador Ernesto Gomez Diaz for this kind gesture.
Demonstrations were seen in Jerusalem on Friday to demand that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu resign.
We do our best to make sure everyone entering the country is checked by symptoms, as well as any record of being in contact with infected people. We make samples from anyone with symptoms.
We have carried out around 11,000 polymerase chain reaction tests for our dear passengers so far, and the statistics are very good. Under 1% of passengers have tested positive.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesoenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.